Treasury stock.
Wait, how? Gotta wait till I do.
Oh, okay, all right.
Patient.
Okay.
Maybe it'd be, okay.
Treasury stock. This is when a company buys back its own stock off the stock market. So what happens is the company has issued stock, other people have bought it all up, and now the company wants to buy back its own stock. A couple of things can happen when a company does this, different ways to account for it. It can be retired, which never happens, so we're not even going to think about it, or it can be held in the treasury. We're going to do the accounting for when the stock is held in the treasury. There's two methods of accounting for treasury stock. There's the cost method, which everyone uses, and the other method, which we're not even going to think about. But I think they're both mentioned in your book. So treasury stock, cost method, that's it. So why would a company buy back its own stock? I've got a couple of articles in the Blackboard section that gives you a little bit of insight into that. A company can, maybe the stock price is down and the company figures, well, this is a good opportunity to buy it and we'll reissue it for more money later. And also a lot of companies have sort of target ranges that they like to keep their stock price within. And so if their stock price is, getting out of that range, they may want to buy shares off the market to impact that. And then there's another good reason, another reason that sometimes they will buy back treasury stock is it is very helpful to earnings per share. Just a quick little example here. If you have a company that has net income of $10,000, this is before they buy back their shares. They had 1,000 shares out, and so their earnings per share would be $10 a share. If they buy back 500 of those shares, now there's only 500 shares outstanding. And so when you take that same net income and divide it by less shares, you get a much higher earnings per share. Poof. Okay. So let's see. So that's pretty much sort of why they buy back treasury stock. When we get to the accounting for it, we have a few rules. You have to keep in mind, treasury stock is not an asset. Why do I even bother to mention that? We've done a section on investments. And so when you're buying stock off the market, that's a good investment, but not when you buy your own stock. When a company buys its own stock, that's not an asset, not an investment. It's a stockholders' equity transaction. If you remember from your stockholders' equity section, treasury stock is deducted from the total stockholders' equity. You have your total retained earnings and stockholders' equity less treasury stock. So it's a stockholders' equity account. It's not an asset. When a company issues its common stock, the common stock, chances are, has a vote. Once it's bought back as treasury stock, no vote. It no longer votes. It would be like, oh yes, I can vote for me all the time, because these are owner transactions. We're buying back our own stock. So no votes for treasury stock. Treasury stock does not receive dividends, which would also be just kind of silly. And we recognize no gains and losses on treasury stock transactions. And when I get to the accounting for it, you'll see what that means. And then we have an account called paid-in capital treasury stock, and that cannot go below zero. And then the other thing is that you'll see that retained earnings can be decreased by treasury stock transactions, but retained earnings will not be increased by them. I didn't want to write that all out, but that's in the notes. Okay, so let's do a little bit of the accounting for it, and let's see what happens. So a company buys 1,000 shares of its own stock at $50 a share. So this is 9-1, and I'm going to abbreviate here. We bought some treasury stock, and so 1,000 shares at $50 a share. We have bought 50,000 worth of treasury stock, and presumably we paid cash. So this 50,000 represents the 1,000 shares times the $50. And when you're doing the homework or working with these, you probably want to do that because this becomes the cost base for all of that treasury stock. And you'll see how that fits in. Okay, so on 9/5, the company reissues. We're selling it out onto the open market again. So when they reissue the 200 shares at 60, we're going to go cash, and we're reissuing 200 at 60. So those 200 shares, we will get $12,000. Now, this is where it gets tricky. The treasury stock is going to come off the books at what we paid, at the market price per share we paid for it. So it's going to come off the books at 200 times the 50. All right? So that would be 10,000. So we've got a $2,000 difference here. And if you think about this, we bought something for 50, we sold it back for 60, we should be very happy because we have made some money on this transaction, all right? So we're very happy. But we have this rule here, no gains and losses. So what we use is what's called a paid-in capital treasury stock account, okay? And that's where any increases or decreases as a result of the transaction end up. Okay, so that's the paid-in capital treasury stock. Okay, now on 9/6, we reissue some 200 more shares, but now the stock price is down to 45. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so we're going to get 200, but just times 45. So we're only getting 9,000. The treasury stock still has to come off the books at that 200 times 50. Okay, so that's coming off the books at 10,000. Wait a minute, I have to leave another spot here. Okay, the treasury stock comes off the books at 200 times 50. Okay, so that's 10,000. And now if we think about what's happened here, we had bought something for 50 and now we're reissuing it and we're only getting 45. So we're probably, we're not as happy about this. Okay? All right. So here we have to reduce the paid-in capital treasury stock account to make up the difference there. Okay. So far, so good. Or so far it was good to start, now it's getting a little worse. Now we come down to the 8th, and let's see what happens. For some reason, we're reissuing 200 more shares, and now it's down to 40. Oh, all right, so we're going to get cash, and it's going to be 200 times 40. That's what we're going to receive. So now we're only getting 8,000. The treasury stock has to come off the books. I hope you can still see this. That's going to come off at 200 times the 50, 10,000. And now we know we can reduce the paid-in capital treasury stock account, but we've got this rule, it can't go below 0. And how much did we have in it? We had 2,000 in paid-in capital treasury stock. We've already used up 1,000, so if this is our paid-in capital treasury stock, it's not a bad idea to do this as you're doing these problems. We've only got 1,000 left in that. So we can only take 1,000 out of that, but we've got another 1,000 to deal with, and that comes out of retained earnings. So this is how retained earnings can get reduced by treasury stock transactions, but it can never be increased by them. The increases will show up in this paid-in capital treasury stock account, which we just zeroed out. So any increases would show up there, and then that can't go below 0. So beyond that, it comes out of the retained earnings. So those are your basic treasury stock transactions. Work through a few of the problems on them, and it might start to make some sense.